Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I want to wish you all a very happy new year. I know that you're all excited about 2021 starting up here and hopefully putting it back a lot of, everything that happened from last year in the rearview mirror. I want to do something a little different. I haven't done anything on this channel in kind of a while. I kind of reserved this channel for standalone subjects, something that maybe is just more on my mind and something to kind of talk about separate from our more lighthearted stuff there on the live streams and everything on the main channel. And this video here we're going to dabble a little bit into the political side of things for this past year. So if you're not interested in that, I totally understand. And if you want to back out of the video, that's a-okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a main video on the main channel, and we'll do a trivia live stream and just have that be, it's, the same as all those other videos. But certainly with the thoughts of a lot of things from last year, I kind of want to put a bow on a couple of things from that, especially from the standpoint of a media member, which is kind of what this channel has kind of turned into a little bit on this second one here. We've talked a lot about media ethics and concerns in the media going forward, especially from certain incidents that happened last year. Of course, you think back to the events that occurred at Talladega Superspeedway with surrounding Bubba Wallace, other stories along the way, and really that it's. I think that there was a lot that I was talking about back then, in particular about not being able to disagree. And I think the more I've thought about it since doing that video, it's really made me think a lot more about, where else am I seeing that? And what's the effect of that going forward? I think that's the tricky part. So really with what I want to kind of talk about in this is, again, a real hope that I have for this year, and a trend that happened last year that I hope is either on its way out or maybe at some point in the future is going to course correct. Consider, if you will, back in February when there were reports that Rick Ware Racing was going to merge with Premium Motorsports. And at the time, it was just a rumor. Nobody knew what was happening. I heard a little bit about it at Fontana. Didn't have any other information on it, so I didn't really go to press with anything on that. And obviously, if I had other information, I would have certainly done so. The scenario that I'm describing in this video here today is suppose in that same scenario, after hearing about this supposed rumor, that I or another media member would go out there and say, oh, not only is there not going to be a merger between Rick Ware Racing and Premium Motorsports, but anyone that says that, they're just the worst kind of person. They're terrible. They're beyond saving. They're just reprehensible. That is the issue that I have with a lot of last year. I think that obviously there's a lot of frustrations and a lot of concerns and everything that happened from that. But I do believe the one that I think bothers me the most is the media side of it there, because as a media member, the most important thing that you're supposed to do is inform the public of what's happening. Your opinion as to those facts shouldn't even be in there unless you're doing an opinion piece, and then it should be specifically addressed as such. That's the real important thing. When you're just reporting the information, you as the audience can figure out what you want to do with that information. That shouldn't be my job to say, this is how you should feel about it. I could say how I feel about it, but I'm not going to say that that's the objective standard or anything. And I think this is something that's been lost last year. And it could just be a consequence of everything, everybody's going through. Obviously, everything everybody's going through with the pandemic and everything else. But I think that much like what we saw in Talladega last year, that just means it's that much more important to get the basics right and to do it properly, because the cost of not doing so can just completely just boggle the mind. Think, for example, like on this channel right here, if you're browsing through YouTube on the mobile version, for example, it's very hard to get a good understanding of what's actually happening in the world with either the pandemic or in politics or anything like that. Because a lot of times the headline is put forward and saying, oh, well, there's baseless claims about electoral fraud, for example. I warned you it was political, but I'm trying not to go too far down the road here. But you know, if you're reporting that somebody's saying that there is electoral fraud, for example, you could conclude on your own whether that's baseless or not. You should be very skeptical when a news outlet is telling you what to think about the story. And I think and if you really want to look at a perfect example of the real danger of that, again, you have to go back to Talladega last year and the circumstances there. And maybe you have information that's coming out and saying that absolutely that a hate crime happened, and absolutely that there was a noose in Bubba Wallace's garage sale. Very serious allegations. But when there's also at the same time that information is presented in such a way that you are intimidated out of even asking any questions about it, you create a situation much like we had during that week, where it turned out that the FBI thankfully showed that there was no evidence of a hate crime. And then all of that getting even more confused when the picture was posted later in the week, even though that thing about the FBI's findings. And it's not fair to, as I said last year, it's not fair to any party in those cases. And I think a big reason that we get these situations is because, again, I think a lot of times a story is presented in such a way that you're not allowed to question it, that you're not allowed to even present different evidence or anything like that. And I think that last year in particular, if there was one thing that defined last year more than anything else, is it was absolutely critical to get that information as accurately and quickly as possible, and to be able to rely on it. Because we're talking about, and again, I know this is a stock car racing podcast and on live stream and everything, but it really goes beyond that, because it's so much more about what is happening out there, and the media having that access to be able to present you that information. And if those same people that have that access are also telling you that what you can't believe about that, or what viewpoint you can't have about that, they're doing a massive disservice to you. And I think that if there's one hope that I have this year, it's that people are more skeptical of that when somebody is presenting you not just information, but also that little bit of social media influx there. I think it's probably last year was the latest step in a transition with a lot of things in media, because back in the 90s, back when I was younger, a big issue was the split between media and entertainment. And there's some fun things about that. I mean, sometimes you had like The Onion and the newspaper there, or you have The Daily Show, people just kind of having fun with things that are topical, and a lot of times some of that could be harmless, but there can also be some danger in there a little bit, because sometimes, things can kind of get out of control, or maybe people take stories the wrong way, or just don't understand that dividing line. I think we see something very similar last year, where media and social media are now one and the same. And we have a very difficult situation with that. And there's a lot of danger in that. And I think on the one hand, social media, thankfully, it was there in one sense, because, if everybody has to social distance and everything like that during the pandemic, it's good that we're able to interact in some way. But at the same time, the media should kind of separate itself out from that a little bit. And I'm not talking about anything about like verified accounts or anything like that, or verified Twitter accounts or anything. It's really just down to a matter of an approach. And I think that's the real challenging thing. So this is something that I hope for this year. The title of this video about the media's New Year's resolution, I think that that's something the media should really strive to do. And we all lose our way sometimes. Sometimes we go too far one direction or too far another direction. I do think last year was a perfect example of that. And any news story that came down the line, think about all the doctors that came out that were saying that they had some kind of cure for the virus, and how frequently those were shouted down. It's like, oh no, that's not true. That's not true. Or how many tweets came out on election night, and they would immediately have, even if there was any statement of any kind of impropriety, there would immediately be a disclaimer that was posted beneath it saying, oh, well, these allegations are, being, discounted by actual election officials and things like that. I mean, these conditions that are put in, it's just, you have the information out there. If the information isn't correct, or if the information is untrustworthy, that's for us. That's for all of us to figure out. We shouldn't want some third party to step in and say, oh, well, you can't believe this, or you can't say that this isn't true, or you can't say that this is true. We should be very cautious about that. And I'm very troubled by that as a media member, because last year it was more important, I think, than any year really in recent years, maybe even since 9/11 in particular, that we have to know exactly what's happening. We have to exactly understand what threats or what we are facing, and really understand as best as possible. And certainly in the first few months of it, I mean, we didn't know what we were dealing with. And and I'm sure the media members were trying to figure it out just like the rest of us. But the problem I also had was, as that year continued, it seemed like that mental state didn't change, that it was still like, oh, and all these stories of just focusing on the rates of infection, and everything being that much more serious, and everything, and certainly being serious, a serious thing to be handling appropriately. But it just, there's a certain line there again where you have to really, again, what information is you're being provided that's actually helpful, and what is instilling panic, what is actually being dangerous in that sense. There's a tremendous amount of power in media, and really, and again, this line into social media, I think, has been blurred to such a degree where somebody can make a statement and just put something out there, and it just being treated, or it being dismissed artificially, or anything like that. I think that there's a lot that we haven't entirely been able to get our hands around on. And I think we just had kind of this perfect storm last year of any controversy that came down the line, or any kind of major story. I mean, serious things. Even if, again, if you're talking about, and again, if you're talking about the political side of it, and, you're skeptical of electoral fraud or any allegations of it, that's fine. If you don't believe that that's happening, that's fine. But it should at least be left to you, the viewer, you, the person. You shouldn't have to be told that, oh, this allegation came out, but, oh, it's not true, so don't worry about it. You should be very skeptical of that. Because again, that's not what the media should be doing. The media should be informing you, and you put that information out there. And again, we all have the ability to process information. We all have the ability to think about it, but we don't all have the access to that information. And again, this was a big thing that we talked about on the motorsports side last year. And I really think that after June, I really was kind of noticing more and more of these examples happening in mainstream media and all that. And this isn't, again, this and especially not the main channel, are not political channels. But I do think, I've been biting my tongue a little bit about this, because it seems like it's just a cycle that just keeps happening over and over again. And who knows what other stories are happening out there that we're just not seeing. And it could be something even, I mean, it's that should be something that we should all kind of be concerned about. So uh it's a difficult situation. And it's an unfortunate situation, and there's a lot of collateral damage that could be caused by just not getting it right. And cycling things back again to the motorsports side of it, the Bubba Wallace situation was a tragedy. I thought it was, and I touched on this a little bit, actually. I didn't want to go full into it during, I think, my last live stream, where I mentioned offhand that the goodwill that NASCAR had as the first motorsport to come back was squandered in that month afterwards. And I do believe that was the case. I think it was unfortunate. I think that NASCAR completely mishandled the revealing of information about that investigation. I think that was completely unprofessional and extremely unhelpful, especially knowing that the media members could not have access to the infield and try to verify it themselves, or talk with other people that may have been witnesses, and try to get that information. And then the story just gets out and gets copy pasted, and everybody runs with it. And then a lot of the rhetoric that in the coming days was about, yeah, anybody that disagrees with this narrative the NASCAR put out, then yeah, you're just, you're in just the worst class of people. You're reprehensible. You're this, you're that. And then it turned out that there was an investigation. They found out that wasn't the case. And so, and it's, it's really unfair. I mean, it's unfair when it happens, and when you see it just over and over again, it makes you wonder how much of it is being affected with everything else in the news today, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's the election, whether it's anything else there. I think, it requires just kind of like just pump the brakes a little bit. Let's try to figure out, let's hear a little bit from both sides, see what's going on there, and then we all figure it out. We all figure out what our standpoint is on this. And I think that's something, I think, that all of us together, whether you're a media person or you're somebody outside just getting the information, or anything else on there, I think it's something that we should all strive for in the new year. So I know this is a bit of a rambling kind of discussion on here, but it's troubling. It's really troubling. I think that a lot of, as bad as 2020 was, and as out of control and maybe larger than any one person, a lot of what happened last year turned out to be. I think a lot of it was made worse because of the way that just interactions between people have broken down, and nowhere has that been more dangerous than between media and people, because media and people outside of media, because again, we have to make sure that information gets out to people, and that people are informed, and that they can rely on that information and act as best they can. Uh, I I'm just not confident that that really happened in a lot of cases last year. I think more often we're told, "Oh, don't look at this. Oh, don't worry about that. Oh, that's not a story. This is the story. That's not the story. This is." It's like, no, no, hang on. I want to hear from somebody that says this is the story. I want to hear from somebody that says this is the story, and then I'll figure it out. And it's a hard thing to do. It's so hard to do. I mean, that's why I'm kind of putting this out here as just kind of an open letter, basically. I hope it's something that we can figure out. I hope it's something that in time, the media can lead the way, and be out there. And I think that sometimes you do have to be the change that you want to see in the world. I really, when I do my stuff and just my little corner of the internet here, and I'm doing an opinion piece, I'll flag an opinion and say, look, this is just my opinion. I could be completely wrong. I could not have all the information on this. This is just what I think, should be the case. But then, like, when I'm reporting on something that actually happened, that's in a whole other section. And I think if we just know that, if we're aware of our separation between our opinion side and our reporting side, between our media side and our social media side, I think we can all do a lot more good for just everyday people, and for other media members or other media outlets. And I think that, especially as we start a new year, I think that this was, hopefully the best time to kind of go over this here. So I certainly hope that, I hope that that's something that's helpful this year. I think hopefully, because I think what's really important this year, and with the sense of New Year's, and just being a refreshing and a restart and everything, I think that, it's a good time to start kind of thinking about this and kind of taking a step back a little bit, and say, okay, good. That year's over with. We can kind of put it all on the shelf, but still learn from it. I think much like we talked about in 3 Before February and any of these other videos, what you take from an experience is, I think, often the most important thing. Not just getting through it, but also understanding what went wrong and what you can learn from it. And I think that that's really the case. So would love to get you guys' thoughts on this. Again, I apologize. I know this went a little political, a little on that side of it there, but I'd love to get your guys' thoughts. I see a few of your thoughts here in the comment in the section here, but if you want to drop a comment there in the video here below. Again, this isn't going to be typical. On the note of 2021, this isn't going to be typical for my channel this year, but when I have like individual subjects, something that's just kind of just in the back of my mind or something, that's when I'm going to kind of jump onto here and do videos like this. They're not all going to be necessarily like this one, but well, certainly that'll be appropriate. But I am going to do a live stream either later tonight or sometime this weekend on the main channel, and that'll be something different. So I just didn't want this to leach into that. So we'll do something a bit more lighthearted here. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'll leave the video here for now, but if you have any comments or thoughts on it, I'd love to read it down in the section here below. And in the meantime, again, Happy New Year, and my goodness, God willing, it'll be a much better year, certainly, than last year. Thank you, folks.